time. Gypsy Corner is unknown to a lot of people in Cambridgeshire. It's actually at Moulton's crossroads between Moulton and Newmarket, but it's known to many of the local villages up in Moulton as Gypsy Corner. It goes back quite some years, it's quite interesting. Now, the story goes basically is that it's about a chap who died in 1841, legend. Talks about a boy who kills himself, sadly, for fear of losing one of the sheep within his flock. Let's talk more about that as we go forward. So you can see it's a pretty much modern road today. The grave itself is almost hidden from view, I guess, unless you know where you're driving to. And as we go further down, we can see, we'll talk about the legend of that in a moment, is supposedly, allegedly, a gypsy boy who was in charge of a flock of sheep, and I say he actually fell asleep due to tiredness as coming across on his travels back to the actual family site. And then, because he fell asleep, he had it in his head that he'd lost one of the sheep because of falling asleep. And with the shame of the family being brought on him and not knowing whether he'd be forgiven, he sadly took his own life, but only to discover later that all sheep were present. But the story goes a bit deeper than that. We've got a connection between things that we've already shown you. All Saints Church in Snettisham, the main church in Snettisham. So imagine this boy, 1841, flock of sheep, falls asleep, fear of losing one of the sheep, which would be worth an immense amount of money to allow the family to survive right through the winter. Kills himself, and they end up burying him here where he committed suicide at Gypsy Corner. 1841, the Bury and Norwich Post did some extensive research, allegedly, into the death of this boy, and they found out the reason for the grave was in fact nothing to do with the local area to start with. It would be a lot larger. The graveyard back then was a lot larger. It was about here to this size in a rectangle formation with lots and lots of loops going around it. And obviously the wooden loops have actually gone. Now that's different. And it's been replaced with a metal fence, I guess, for longevity and glass wood chippings. But back in the 70s, it had a regular replenishment every few weeks of fresh flowers, both potted flowers in the sense, planted flowers, and fresh cut flowers. And that was the myth and legend of the area. No one knew where these flowers were coming from. However, later on that year, or later on in years, it was discovered that there's a lady who lives in London that just happened to be passing this way on the way to Newmarket, I guess on a tour of the area. She happened to stumble across or see the roadside grave, and something told her, or it made her feel compelled to come here regularly to freshen the grave up. She was coming from London every couple of weeks to place flowers on the graveyard, which is interesting. There's more of an interesting twist to this, that it is said that if you refuse the heather, you'd be cursed. I suppose that has followed on to the site of the gypsy boy, that if you don't leave an offering, you'd be cursed. And as we can see, if we just come in a bit closer, we can see that there's much more offerings here of the most oddity, some strange donations, as it were, some offerings, from teddy bears to a fluffy octopus or spider, or a series of spiders, to a fairy, and even, I think, that's one of the little bulldozer people from the little dozers. So there's interesting things that have been given. The thing that's quite interesting about this grave is that there's a direct connection to Snettisham Church, to Castle Rising, the castle itself, and obviously here. But what is that connection? And that's what we need. That's what we're looking into right now. That's the sort of things we're going on the quest to find. We have a grave being attended to. We know the reasons why the grave has been attended to, because of this wonderful lady from London that was regularly putting fresh flowers on the grave. One can only assume, it's gone to the glass now, the shavings, and the more fixed things for longevity and less maintenance. Back in the late 1970s, this particular lady decided to put a cross on the actual grave. Now, what was interesting to local people is at that time she put a plaque on that actually said Joseph. which was quite interesting. So there's speculation about was the chap's name, because it means the Lord is my God. It doesn't say that God is God, it says the Lord is my God. Now anyone who is religious or even not remotely religious, think about these words that we see, think about what's written in various religious scriptures, the Torah, the Quran, the Bible, any of these Quaker magazines, Mormon scriptures, baptism scriptures, any type, angelic, anything that's written, it's so left open to interpretation that it's beyond belief. Because Elias, break it down to its basics, Elias simply means the Lord is my God. So which Lord are we referring to? I'll leave that for you to decide. Sense of feeling, you get a sense of calmness but frustration at the same time. You can almost imagine the horses and carts roaring backwards and forwards or clopping backwards and forwards over the years. You can get the sense of, take it back another 100 years to having the boy. So here we are at a place between Moulton and Newmarket that most people around this area, apart from locals, wouldn't even blink to see. An amazing place, a respectful place, and if you do come here, one would hope that you treat it with some kind of respect and dignity to which Elias deserves.